Hello, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today. We are going to work with a very interesting subject. I hope that you like it. I hope that you learn a lot, and I hope that you participate a lot as well. Okay, it's managing the lesson. We are going to start now. I am going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Okay, can you see my screen right now? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, Ale, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So as we said, the subject of this session is managing the lesson. I welcome all of you, teachers, and I hope that we have a very nice session today. The objective of this session is to learn and practice all the elements that we have when we are managing a lesson. The idea is to practice also the way of structuring a lesson in order to have successful lesson plans. As you know, because you are teachers, it's very important to have a very well-managed lesson in order for our lesson to be actually successful. Okay, if we do not have the idea previously, it's very difficult to achieve a good lesson plan. So before we start, I would like you to participate with me in answering these questions. What, for each one of you, what is lesson planning? Do you think, or do you agree that it's actually important to plan a lesson? Why or why not? And how do you usually plan lessons? Okay, you can open your microphone or you can write in the chat, however you feel like it.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What is a lesson planning for me? I'm teacher Aurea. I'm from Colegio Ojo de Agua. And what is a lesson for me? It's a form to create the correct form to work with my students. It's important to plan a lesson? Yes, because we have students with different kind of teachings. So we have to create a class for all of them. Why? That is the reason. And how do I plan a lesson? I plan with links, videos, games, interactive book, flashcards, maybe apps. I use a lot of apps because in these times the students use it. So it's important to use for that we could get that they be interesting. That's that I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Aurea. Yes, that is very important. In these times, it's very important to have different elements for planning our lessons. Our students are not happy if we just have like the regular elements, like probably as we learned, now they need more. They need technological apps, or they need different stuff so they can actually, so our class can actually work out.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, this is Miss Norma. I'm working in Colegio Helen Keller in Pachuca. And I think it's important to have a lesson plan. As we all know, sometimes it's hard to do it step by step because we plan in advance and we don't know if it's gonna work. Sometimes what happens to me is that I'm in the middle of an activity and it is not working the way I planned. So at times you have to give it a twist and then you have to change it so you can modify it so your students do what you want them to do or to have the results you want to have. So sometimes even though you spend some time planning, at the last minute you see or you realize that the activity is not working the way you thought, the way you dreamed about the activity to go on. So at times I agree and I disagree at times because sometimes we spend a lot of time planning and in the last minute, we have to change all the things that we were planning in advance because it's not working the way we thought it was going to work. So what I would like to know is that sometimes if we skip the planning, of course it is not possible because we have to plan and we have to have the idea of what we are doing during the class. But at times it's hard for me, and I think for some of us, to spend some time or a lot of time planning, and at the last minute we have to change it because it is not working the way we want it to work. So at times the plan we have is just a side because we have to do something different because the activities that we were planning, they are just like not giving the results we want. So that's my opinion about planning.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you, and I think most of us do. Every one of us that has been in front of a group, we know that, okay, that we have to plan. And also you were saying that those things there in the chat, that we need to plan according to our students, okay? So because we are talking to people. So depending on how the lesson is actually going on, we have to change at some points, okay? We need to have a lesson plan as a support. However, the important thing is that I have the ability to change it according to my students, that I know that I am actually talking to people, that if it is not working or whatever happens, I need to have the ability to change. Okay, so a good lesson planning is essential to the process of teaching and learning because it reduces my stress at the moment of teaching because I have a plan, I know what I am going to do, but I know that I need to know that I can change it at that moment. Okay, so the idea of having a good lesson planning is mainly for me. Okay, so I can have less stress. If I stand in front of an audience, no matter the age, and I have no idea what I am going to do, that stresses me out and I am not going to be able to respond correctly. However, if I have a lesson planning that I have done in advance, in which I have different kinds of activities, and in those activities, I have the ability to change them according to the situation, I am going to feel more confident. Okay, so that's mainly the important of a lesson plan, that I have some activities planned, but also knowing always that at some point those might change. Okay, so the idea of a lesson plan is to have objectives, engaging activities for each moment of the class, and no matter if I am going to change them throughout the lesson, but I have something as a base, as a support of what I am doing. And besides, if I keep on teaching to the same group for a while, I get to know that group, so that will help me to plan in advance also the activities that I know that are going to be helpful for them. So the idea to manage lesson effectively is that I have at the end a successful lesson plan in all the courses that I plan, okay? And the 6 elements of this practice of managing lessons correctly are these ones that I show here. We are going to work with these 6 elements now, okay? I am going to read them quickly for you. Explaining learning aims and content appropriately, setting up classroom activities that include a variety of interaction patterns, checking understanding, establishing and maintaining classroom discipline, making up appropriate decisions about which languages are used by the teacher and learners, and controlling the pace and timing of activities. Okay, as I tell you, we are going to be working with each one of them. But before start working with each one of them, I would like you to rate them. Rate them as in how much do you already know about each one of these elements and which ones you think you are good at, okay? For this rating, you are going to use this link. I am going to write it for you in the chat. So it's easier for you to just click on it and go in. Okay, there it is in the chat already. Okay, so if you can go in over there, you can write your name or you can leave it without a name. It doesn't matter. And you're going to see this. You're going to see this question. It's each one of the elements that I just read for you, and the idea is that you rate it according to how much you know or how good you are at each one of this. Okay, thank you. I have one person that has already answered. Okay, so what we can see according to your answers is that for most of you, this is not like a very familiar thing, talking about the aims and content for the students. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next one. Setting up classroom activities that include a variety of interaction patterns. Okay, how well do you do this changing in interaction patterns? What do you think? Okay, thank you. So you're not most of you are not very familiar with this either. Good, because we're going to talk about all of this. And the next one, checking understanding. Okay, thank you. So you're a little more familiar with checking understanding practices. Now, what about establishing and maintaining classroom discipline? Thank you. And making up appropriate decisions about which languages are used by the teacher and learners. How do you rate this? Okay, very good. And controlling the pace and timing of activities. Okay, so we can see that you're good at this, a lot of you. Thank you very much. Okay, so the idea for this was for you to just be familiar with what we are going to talk, okay? The idea is that we talk about this, about each one of them, and that you learn more and have more ideas to work with each one of these elements of managing the lesson. So as for the first one, okay, explaining the aims and the content of my lesson, do you think that it is important actually for learners to know the aims of the lesson? Do you actually do this in your classes? Do you ask them at the beginning if to look at the learning aims and work with it? What do you think? Okay. We
It's
have,
important because I think if the boys and girls know about the lessons, they can give a more brain drain and is more interactive the class, I think.
yes, okay, definitely, yes. If they know what they are going to do, it's easier for them to be engaged in the class. Okay, let's look at the chat. I think it's important because it's good for them to know what you are expecting from them. Yes, definitely. Okay, it's important if they to know for them to know the aims and what you are expecting from them, so that they can know what they can do. Okay, and they can work in a better way if they know what they are actually going to do. Okay, so yes, that is the idea. So what we can say on this subject is that it's important for the students to know it, and they usually want to. Okay, they usually want to know what they are doing. They usually ask, okay, and what are we going to do now? And why are we going to do this? And how is this going to be useful for me? Okay, yes, they need to be aware of the activities they are going to do. Okay, definitely, as you are saying. And helping them understand the aims also helps them to make connections to what they have already learned previously. Okay, so if I explain to them what we are going to do now is this, it's for them easier to understand, like, oh, it's because we have already learned something that I learned before. Okay, and make connections so they can have a more significant learning. Okay, that's the idea as well. And that's why it is important to reflect on my students how well, at the end, how well the aims were achieved. Okay, so I can plan my future lessons. If I explain them, okay, so we had these aims, our objectives were these, and at the end of the lesson, like, take them into account again and say, okay, so which ones did we achieve? What did you learn today? Okay, it's easier for me to plan a future lesson so I can like have a clear idea on if they have, if the purpose has been achieved and if they have learned what I wanted them to learn. And it's easy to check throughout my classes if they are actually having a progress. Okay, so that's the idea of explaining the aims at the beginning. Now,
Sorry,
yes?
can I say something in here? Can I have any?
Sure.
Okay, I think that at times, well, for example, in my case that I have first graders, it is like a little bit difficult for them to know what they are using. What I do is the inductive way in which I have them do some activities or I have some exercises and they use it and they produce and they use the structure without knowing that they are using certain structure. So at the
Yes.
time when I go to the grammar and I explain what they are using and what they are saying, that's when they realize what they are saying, even though they used it before, or even though they practice for some time.
Yes.
And at the end, when I mention what they are using, they are just like surprised. Oh, we were saying all these things. So I think it depends. So it depends. Sometimes it is not necessary to say, okay, you're gonna learn this, and then you're gonna use it. Sometimes you only have them use it as like if they were saying something in their mother tongue. And I think it is like sometimes more um, productive for them, because it is better when they say something even though they don't know what they are saying, but at the last minute you tell them what they were saying and they realize they were producing certain structure without knowing. That's my opinion.
Okay, yes, yes, very good. Obviously, we do it in different ways according to the age of our students, okay, and according to their characteristics. And definitely, sometimes we can do it at the beginning or sometimes we can do it at the end, okay? The idea is to think about this so we can use it for them to be aware that they are learning something, okay? It doesn't matter if at some points or depending on the age of my students, I do it at the beginning, or at some points I can do it in the end, okay? As you were saying, first they actually do it and then I make them realize what they were doing or what they learned. The important is that they can be aware that they are actually learning something and link their progress with the activities that they are doing, okay? Rather than explaining the grammar aims, we should tell them the function. Okay, yes, definitely. Okay, the idea is not to, the important thing when explaining the aims is not to use like a very technical language, okay? It's important to plan the way in which we can do this, okay? So.
May I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
I think it's very important For example, I think if the teacher prepare your class, and I think the boys and girls, no matter what grade they are, I think if you have a good organized in your class, you can finish in good time the activities. Is not I don't care about spelling, grammar, project. I don't know. If you have a good organized in your day, in your class, you can finish in a good time the projects or the activities, I think.
Yes, yes, okay. Yes, it's important to plan your lesson correctly so everything goes in order. And as you were saying in here, that junior high, sometimes they don't really care of knowing. Yes, definitely. Sometimes they don't care of knowing the aims, or sometimes they don't care about a lot of things. Okay, sometimes it's difficult to make them be interested in something. Okay, it's difficult with teenagers. Okay, however, as long as I keep on telling them what we are doing and that they are going to achieve something, it's easier to keep them engaged so they can follow that we have a line on what we are doing, okay? That our activities are not just over there for them to be entertained for a while, okay? So that they can know that there's something that's actually going on and that we have a plan, okay? That's the idea. So I am going to show you some ideas, and I want to see your opinion on if you think that it's something that we should do or we shouldn't do. We can find a way to engage them. Yes, of course. Okay, with trending topics, linking it to social media, definitely. Okay, as we were saying since the beginning, right now for them, there are other things that are more important. So if we engage them through those things, it's easier to catch their attention. So we have this. Describe the skills that students will develop during the lesson. Do you think that that is something that we should do, or that we something that we don't?
Okay, can I say something again?
Sure.
I think it is not necessary, because at times students, if you tell them, okay, you're gonna be doing this, or you're gonna be doing some oral practice, then you're gonna do some written exercises. I mean, it is not necessary at times, because the important thing is that they produce, that they use the language, and that they acquire the language. So I think at times, or most of the times, it is not necessary to guide them so much and telling them that, okay, now we're gonna do some oral practice, now we're gonna do some reading skill. Now, no, because it is like unnecessary, I think, to mention what they are doing, because they are doing it. What matters is that they produce, that they know how to write it, that they know how to read it, that they have good pronunciation. That's my opinion about this.
Okay, yes, definitely it's not the idea to be like on every activity telling them everything, because at some point they are going to be like, okay, I don't care, just do it. And definitely the important thing is that they actually practice the skill, okay? But it is important at some point, probably not on every activity, but at some point, probably at the end of the lesson or at the end of my unit, to tell them, okay, you have developed this skills, okay? We did all of these activities with a purpose, and the purpose is that you feel more confident while speaking, or that you feel more confident when writing, or things like that, okay? We do it in different ways, okay? It's not like just tell them this is for speaking for every activity, because definitely, as you were saying, okay, the important thing is that they actually do it, but that at some point, probably at the end of my unit or my lesson, tell them, okay, so the skills that we developed in here were, I don't know, speaking, or even tell them, in which activities do you think that we helped you in your speaking skill? And they can tell you on their own, or which of the activities that we did in this week or in this month helped you to develop your listening skill, okay? So that they just be aware that they are learning something, okay? That's mainly the idea. And then we have write the aims on the board at the start of a lesson. Do you think that it's a good idea to do it or not?
I think not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you write them on the board, and you, for any reason, you skip one of them, students are going to be like, Miss, we're missing this. Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? So I think at times it's just like, not necessary, or if you are sure that your activities are going to be done the way you plan them, and you're going to do every single aim you have on the board, unless that happens, it is okay. But if you don't do it, if you're not sure you're going to do it, each of them, it is not like really good to write them on the board, because students are going to be telling you, you missed this and this and this, and we didn't do this and we didn't do that. So that's what I think.
Of course, okay. It's very important to have my lesson planned and know that I am actually going to achieve the aims, because if not, they can turn around against me, okay? But what we can do is just write like a general aim, okay? Like today we are going to work with speaking or with listening, or the aim is that today you are going to learn how to form, I don't know, present perfect, okay? Like just a general aim, not the sub aims or not the activities, okay? But just like the general aim, so that they know why we are doing this, okay? In general, not like particular or for each one of the activities. And do you think that is a good idea to use academic language?
It's basic. It's basic.
Yes, it is it's important, but if we use academic language, the problem is that students probably are not going to understand, okay? When I refer to academic language, I mean like the terms, like as you were saying, okay? At some points, I don't need to tell them like which is the grammar that we are actually working, but that they just learn how to do it, okay? So if I use academic language or very academic language, especially depending on the age, I can lose their attention, okay? So I have to be like a little bit careful with this part of the academic language, only that. And check understanding by using examples and asking questions, okay? Not all the times, at least, yes, as Mr. Carlos Omar says. It's important to check understanding by using examples and asking questions, because that way I know if they are actually getting the idea. And it's important also to think of ways in which the learners can measure their progress, okay, so that they can be aware, and me as a teacher can also be aware of what they are doing, what they are learning. And finally, take notes to give individual feedback and decide areas to focus on. What do you think? Use strategies to make them use what they learned. Okay, yes, definitely. Okay, as long as we have a group that is actually participating and creating something, it's easier for me to know that they are actually going to learn something. Okay, so this is mainly the idea. Do you have anything else that you would like to add before we move on to the next activity? It's important to give individual feedback. Yes, some students love using idioms better than academic language. Yes, actually they do. They understand better because they can relate it, because at some points they have, for example, they have seen a movie and they can relate to something about their own experience or about a trip that they have made or something like that. Okay, so now, as we were saying, while it's important to explain the aims, we're not going to do it in the same way, okay? How can we share aims with students in an interesting way? If we do it, as you were saying, if we just do it like talking or writing them on the board, sometimes they are not going to be interested, sometimes they are not going to actually care about it, okay? So it's important how we can share the aims with our students in an interesting ways. Okay, so think about those of you that have worked with this, that you have worked with aims with your students. How have you done it? Okay, what are like interesting ways in which I can share the aims with them in a way that they can actually be interested in it, not like just use it, that they use it like against me or things like that. Okay, you can share through the chat. Okay, sorry. That's how they get attached to the language. Okay, so tell me, in which ways do you think that you go, which ways can you think of sharing the aims with your students, like in an interested way? You can open your microphone or you can do it through the chat as you wish. Challenge them with real life situations in which they must use the object aim. With engaging videos, that's a good idea, showing the target function. Okay, can you think of any other ways? With real life situations, especially with teenagers, debates, you can see the necessity. Explain to them using an example from real life and find it practical. Yes, using real life examples usually always works in a great way, okay? They like real life examples. They can relate to it and they pay attention. With a video music or a cartoon, yes, for smaller children, that works very good. They have to learn, they also have to learn that they will face to serious and formal sits with real examples, okay? So yeah, definitely that would be like the best way, okay? Like, so what we can conclude on this first element of managing a lesson is that it's important for the students to know what they are doing in the class, to know that we have a plan so that they can feel secure, that they know that they are going to learn something, and at the end to make them aware about what they learned. But it's important to do this in an interesting way, okay? By copying all the aims that come like in my teacher's book, that's not going to work, okay? I have to think about an activity or examples or support material that can help me show them what they are going to learn or what they have already learned, but in an interesting way, okay? Now we are going to move on to the next element, which is setting activities with different interaction patterns, okay? So we are going to start talking about first, what are interaction patterns? And do you think that they are important? What do you think? How they work? Yes, like in pairs, in groups, or individually. Yes, that's what an interaction pattern is. And do you think that it's important? Do you think that it's important to have a variety of interaction patterns? Yes, why? Why do you think that would be important for them to be changing the interaction pattern in which they are working throughout my class? So they can interact, they can work with different people, practice different skills, and also, let's say exactly, that's what I'm gonna say, to keep the interest, so they don't get bored. If I am all the time sitting in one place and doing one same kind of activity, I'm going to get bored at some point. Okay, so the idea is if I can interact with other people, at some points I can work alone, at some points I'm gonna work with pairs, at some points in groups. That's going to help me develop my skills, and also it's going to help me not to get bored. And as a teacher, it's going to help me for having their attention. So interaction patterns, as you said, are the different ways that the learners work with each other and with you. At some point, the interaction pattern is going to be talking to me, and the different interaction patterns are useful for different activity types, okay? You will want throughout your class to use different patterns depending on the learning aim of the activity as well, okay? You need to think about which is the best way according to your learning aim and also according to your students, okay? As we said since the beginning, we plan for our students. We're working with people. So if I know my group, I know which are the good interaction patterns in my group for each one of the activities, okay? So it's important that I actually use this knowledge. And if I have different ways of working throughout the lesson, as we were saying, they are going to keep attending the lesson. It's going to increase their understanding because they can share with each other. And at the end, they are not going to be bored, okay? Which is the main idea, that they don't get bored, because if I get bored, I do not learn, okay? I don't even pay attention. Depends on the activity. The students can work in pairs, trios, on the chairs, stand up, okay? Also, that's important, okay? That they don't always work in the same way. That if they are going to work, not only that at some point they are going to work in pairs or in trios or in groups, but that they are going to move throughout the classroom as well or go outside. They like these changes throughout the class. So I am going to show you some interaction patterns, and I would like you to give me an example activity. Okay, first we are going to match the interaction pattern to the description, and then I would like you to tell me what would be an example activity that would suit this kind of situation. So we have this one. Two learners work together on a task. How do we call that interaction pattern first? Yes, we call it pair work, okay? And what would be an example activity of this? At what point of your class it's good for you to use pair work? In dialogues or in a conversation? In a role play or an interview? Okay, yes, those are good moments to work in pairs. Now we have another interaction pattern. Students work on a task in small groups and the teacher usually monitors and helps. How do we call that? Number 2, group work, okay, yes. And what example activity can you give me for group work? A project, yes. A debate. Okay, and at some point I can use group work and I can let them choose their own groups, so they can be like with their friends or the people that they like. And at some other points I can choose the groups so they can also work like with different kinds of people, and they don't work always with the same people. Then we have the teacher talks to the whole class at once, presenting or answering questions. How do we call that? 7, teacher to learners. Okay, very good. And at which points in my class it's important that I use this interaction pattern? When presenting structures, introducing a grammar form, yes. When introducing language, mainly, okay? It's not like the interaction pattern that students like the most. They like more like working in groups or pair work or things like that. However, it's very important that I have points in my class in which I can talk to them, because I need them to understand things that I need to explain, like structures or vocabulary or language or things like that. And then I have a student talks to the whole class or to a group to present their ideas or check answers. How do I call that? What interaction pattern is it? Number 1, learner to learners, okay? And which are example activities in which I can use this interaction pattern? Expositions. Can you think of any other? A speech, okay? And I use this interaction pattern mainly when I want them to develop a little more of their speaking skill, okay? We see usually in our students that they develop their listening skill, that they develop their reading skill, and it's kind of easier for them to develop these skills. However, speaking is usually difficult for them. Okay, sometimes they can understand perfectly what I am saying. They can understand perfectly what they read. They can even write kind of good, but it's difficult for them to speak. okay, because they get nervous, they don't know the words, it's difficult for them. It's usually the last skill that they develop, okay? So when I use this interaction pattern, I help them a little more to work with this skill. And then I have, it's for individual tasks where students don't share. How do I call that interaction pattern? Number 6, learners work alone, okay? And in which kind of activities I can use it? When working in a book, when writing, usually I make them write alone, or answering a quiz or a test, okay? At some point, I need them to work alone so I can check their individual progress, okay? It's important also. And also for like students that are more shy, I need to give them this space in which they don't need to be like interacting with the rest at all times. And I have the whole class moves speaking to as many other classmates as possible. How do I call this interaction pattern? Number 5, mingle. Yes. And which activities do you think are good examples of using this, for using this? In service, yes. Like playing games, like look a person who. Okay, and they usually like to do this, okay? They usually like to interact with each other. It's like a different way. And get also at the beginning for getting to know each other, and for me to get to know them as well. And finally, I have students work in different groups. When they finish part of a task, the group changes and begin the next part of the task with a new one. That would be number 3, rotating groups. That's the last one that I have. And which activities do you think that I can use this interaction pattern in? Specialist groups, yes, when working in the puzzle, sharing results on a survey, search words, okay? They also like to do this, okay? So these are examples of some interaction patterns that you can use. As you can see, each interaction pattern suits a different kind of activity, okay? So it's important when I do my lesson planning, when I plan my activities, plan as well which interaction pattern I am going to use, so I can give a variety, not only of activities in my lesson plan, but also a variety of interaction patterns. So my class is moving all the time. If I can have them like expectant of what we are going to do, it's easier for them to make to be interested in what I am doing. You said teams in order to make competition, yes, and they usually like doing competitions and games and things like that. Okay, so that's the importance of knowing which is the interaction pattern that I have to use. So we're going to move to the next element, which is checking understanding. Okay. Do you think that it's important to check understanding? And what are ways in which you check the understanding in your lessons? Yes, okay. As teachers, we know that it's very important to check understanding, okay? Because if I don't know if my students are getting the idea, then there's no use for me to continue in the lesson, definitely.
Can I say something here?
Sure, go ahead.
I know it's important, but somebody mentioned, somebody wrote that it is the prohibited question is like, did you understand? Because most of the times everybody's going to say like, yes.
Say yes.
And at the time you wanted to say something or produce what you wanted to produce, they won't be able to do it. So this is like the prohibited question, like, did you understand? And I know that sometimes we unconsciously we ask like, do you understand? But I think that the best way is like by asking some questions or some information about the things that you just said. So that's the best way to check that they got it. Because the question, do you understand, is going to be always, the answer is going to be yes, even though it is not.
Yes, definitely. If you say, do you understand, everybody's going to say yes. And it doesn't matter if they yes anyways, okay, definitely. So it's not very effective. And as somebody said also in the chat, the idea, a better idea is to ask them for examples. or to rephrase, no? Okay, what did I just say? Or can you explain in your own words? Okay, things like that are better for checking understanding than just asking, do you understand? Because they are usually going to say that they do, even if they don't. Okay, so definitely. So about checking for understanding, as we said, it's important to make sure that my learners understand what we are doing, and we are going to check it not by asking them if they understand, but by different kinds of activities. Okay, the success of my lesson is going to be my lesson is going to actually be successful if my students are understanding. Okay, if they don't understand, it's difficult that they can follow me. Okay, so it's important to know also that I have students that have understood and which students have actually understood, so I can help them, or if I can see, I can check if I need to give them more practice or explain in a different way. And it's important for their progress. Okay, I have to make sure that they actually understand. At some point, I can explain something and they are not going to actually understand. And if I say somebody, if I ask or I choose somebody and tell them, okay, now you explain it again, or now you explain to your classmates, somebody that I know that has understood, that can help me, because they use different words, they use different examples that are more suitable for their own age, and sometimes that works as well. Okay, get the whole class to provide an example. You can check with an exercise as well, interviewing all students. Okay, yes, all of those are good ways of checking the understanding. The idea is that I have to actually check it so I can continue and my class keeps on going in the way that I planned it. Now, I am going to show you 3 teachers. Probably you are going to be able to relate to one of them, probably not. And I want you to tell me which is the problem in each situation. I have this person who is teacher Alan, and he is presenting an example to his class. He said he used to smoke. And then for check understanding of the students, he asks, was it a recurring action or a single completed event in the past? Do you think that's a good way for checking understanding? What do you think? Do you think that this is going to work? If I say he used to smoke and then ask my students, was it a recurring action or a single completed event in the past, or which problem do you see in here? No, not much, maybe for high schoolers. Okay, yes, definitely. It's a very like academic language. Okay, what we were saying, okay, it's a good thing to use academic language at some points, but not very academic, because you are not, they are not going to understand. Okay, the question is too long, it uses difficult vocabulary. Okay, so it's better if I use easier questions, like for example, did he smoke once or many times? Does he smoke now? Okay, that probably is going to help a little more. Now, I have this teacher, Lina, and she says, that's what disappointed mean. Do you understand? What we have been saying, okay? This is definitely not going to work because everybody is going to say yes, okay? And I'm not going to actually know if they understand disappointed or they don't, no? Okay, the important thing is to explain, like probably tell a story about a time when she was disappointed, relate to real life, okay? So no, this wouldn't be like a good idea. And we have finally this teacher, Sam, sorry. And Sam says, what does shocked mean? Do you think that this is a good way for checking understanding? If I ask my students, what does shocked mean? It's a little better. You say, what do you think? What inconvenience do you see in this way of checking understanding? If you are giving context, yes, okay, that's a very important thing. He's just saying, what does shocked mean? He's not actually giving a context. So it's important first to give a context, talk a little more about that word, as you were saying, and make them explain the action, as Mr. Carlos Omar says. Okay, yes, it's important to give them a little more information. If I say, what does shocked mean? What I expect, or what these teachers expects, is probably their students to give them a definition in English as well, because we are in English class, and that could be difficult. Okay, even for people that dominate the language or something like that, even if you know the language, sometimes it's difficult, like, to give an explanation of a word, even in Spanish, that it's your language. Okay, so it's better if I give them like a context, I give them an example, or I ask them for an example, or I give like a little more. Okay, like for example, I say, I was shocked when I heard about the car accident. Okay, so I give them an example so I can check their understanding better, okay, than by just asking one question. Okay, so that would be the idea. So the idea with these examples is for you to know that at some points it's not that easy to check the understanding of my students. Okay, I have also in my lesson plan, I also have to think about which is the way in which which is the way that I am going to use to check their understanding, so it is not too difficult or too easy for them, and that it's something that actually helpful for me. Okay, we are going to do an activity. In this section, I am going to give you 6 different ways in which you can check that the learners understand the new language. Okay, the idea is that you match the names to the techniques. We are going to use this link. I am going to put it to you in the chat, as I did with the other one. Okay, there it is. So if you can go in there, you're going to see you have different ways in which you can check that learners understand, and you have the situations, and you have to choose in the list of the techniques. At the end, it is going to tell you the correct, if you were correct or not in your answers. Okay, it's like a little quiz. You can enter. You can just click on the link that I wrote in here in the chat to enter, or you can write it as it is in here in the slide, like directly on your, either you're on Google Chrome or Safari or Internet Explorer, just at the top where the address goes, you can just like write it like this, tinyurl.com, and then CHK for check, understanding, and enter, and you can go in. Or just click on the link that I put on the chat. Okay, I have 4 answers already. Six answers. Okay, so I have 11 answers right now. Most of you got a correct answer on the first one, which was pictures. Then for the second one, we have 16 answers right now. Okay, so most of you got correct the first one, which is pictures. The second one, most of you got it correct as well, which was timelines. Third one as well. Number 4. So, oh, you are very good. Most of you got correct all of them. Okay, so the idea on this is that you have like a little more ideas on different ways in which you can check understanding. In here you have 6 other techniques that you could use. And as we said, okay, when I am planning my lesson, it's important for me to check not only the activity that I am going to do, the aim of that activity, the interaction pattern that I am going to use, but also the way in which I am going to check understanding. And I can check understanding in different ways, not only by asking, do you understand? That we have already said is not very useful, but in different ways, by asking them for examples, and by using timelines or pictures or asking them to draw something or things like some ideas that I am giving you in here. Okay, so that's the idea of this exercise, that you get a little more ideas on how you can check the understanding of your students and your class has a little more variety. Okay. So do you have any other comments, something else before moving on to the next? Okay, very good. So we're going to move on to the next element, which is establishing and maintaining classroom discipline. The idea on this is that the more students are engaged in an activity, is the less likely that they are to misbehave. Okay, this is like a general idea. Okay, we know that this not always happens. Okay, I can have like a perfect class, and however, my students are not behaving correctly because they are tired, or because it is hot, or because, I don't know, probably an event is coming and they are nervous. So we have a lot of situations that can make my students misbehave, okay? But the more that I have activities that are previously planned, that I have a variety, it is going to be helpful for me so they can pay attention in what they are doing, okay? So we are going to check some more ideas on this. Please feel free to participate either through the chat, I'm checking it, or through the opening your microphone. The idea on this matter is that as more as you manage your learners' behavior and establish your classroom discipline since the beginning, it's going to be, let's say, easier for you to give your class, okay? It's a good idea to, since the beginning, establish what is going to be the rules in the class so the students know. You have to do it also depending on the size of your classroom, the age of your students, the size of your class. Okay, there are a lot of things to take into account. Okay, I cannot have the same rules for preschool than I have for elementary or for junior or for high school. Okay, definitely. But it's a good idea that according to the age or according to the size of the group or all the elements that I have in my class, it's a very important thing that I set since the beginning what are going to be the rules so that they know that they need to behave and they are expected to behave in a certain way, and that there are going to be consequences as well if they don't. As long as they know what you want them to do and what you expect from them and what they are not expected to do, they at some point can behave more positively. Okay, at least they know. if they break a rule, at least they will know that they are actually breaking a rule. Okay, so it's important to do that. And if you don't have like effective discipline techniques in your classroom, it's going to be difficult to create a good learning environment. Okay, and we need a good learning environment in order for my class to actually work. Okay, do you have any comments on this? Something that you would like to share?
I want to say something.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I think, well, I don't know, but I've talked to some colleagues and they've agreed that nowadays it is really difficult to get students discipline in a classroom because of the
Definitely.
age, not only because of the age, but because of many other reasons. But nowadays students are like really difficult and they're really hard to deal with. I don't know why, or because they have like different rules at home, or they are not used to getting into any rules, or I don't know why. But nowadays it's really hard, even though we are like every day like insisting on discipline and insisting on the rules, or the rules that we gave them the very first day of classes. It is really hard for them nowadays, and for us teachers to control them and to have them. Of course, we don't want students who are sitting all the time and just listening to us and obeying. No, this is not the point. But it's really hard for us to get them like really disciplined in the classroom because of many reasons, but we haven't found a reason why. I mean, we have discussed like this is because of the rules that they might not have at home, or they might not be used to following rules at home or instructions, or I don't know. But it's hard for us to do it in the classroom when they come to our into the class without any discipline or any rules or any established discipline thing, and it's harder for us to get them disciplined in the classroom. So I don't know if other teachers have experienced the same as I have, but nowadays it's like more difficult than before. Especially I have, for example, first graders and second graders, and it's hard for me nowadays. And this is the first time that I have this like situation in my classroom, because before I haven't had this problem. But now it's a little bit hard for me to establish discipline and to really make them respect those things. So I don't know if somebody else has any advices or any other comments, so I can find a way to deal with this, because it's been a really like a hard time.
Definitely, definitely. Students nowadays are really difficult because there's nothing that actually interests them. Okay, it's very difficult for them to keep them entertained, and nothing is enough for them. It's like nothing is enough for them. Okay, not only for you it's difficult, but other teachers are saying the same thing. Okay, some person says especially teenagers, and then somebody else said in kindergarten is more difficult. It actually is difficult at all levels. Okay, we would probably think that small children would behave in a better way, but I mean preschool teachers would say that not actually, no. So it's difficult because everything. I think that a very important thing about a very important reason for this is especially what you said. A lot of them don't have even rules at home. So how can we expect them to obey our rules if they don't even obey their own parents? And probably a lot of you have had parents that come to you and say, teacher, I don't know what to do with them at home. And you're like, okay, if you don't know what to do with your own child, how do you expect for me to deal with the 30 or 20 that I have in a classroom? Okay, it's very difficult. That is something that actually we can learn a way to deal with the students throughout knowing them. It's like maintaining the discipline. Probably with some groups it's going to be easier, with some it's going to be more difficult, but at some point you are going to learn how, the longer that you know them. And there are going to be some points in your career, let's face it, that you're not going to be able to actually have the discipline that you would like. Okay, what you can do is like have a lot of activities, have a lot of variety to try to keep them engaged. But as we said since the beginning, okay, the lesson plan is not going to work 100%. At some point, you're going to have to change it, and there are going to be classes, there are going to be days that is not actually going to work in the way that I would have liked to work. And as a teacher, I need to know how to deal with that as well. Okay, that I'm not a bad teacher because that day or that week or at that special point of my life, I wasn't able to deal with those students. Okay, students are difficult, definitely. We have a teacher that says that if you don't expect to have an audience paying 100% of attention, they feel free and get the evidence. Yes, okay, that's a good thing. Okay, to not to stress out if the things are not happening the way I wanted them to. Okay, and yes, as Mr. Diego says, it's one of the highest challenges in being a teacher, the discipline. Okay, definitely. So I can use the best. I can use my best tools, but I have to be prepared that not everything is going to actually work the way that I planned. I have to be prepared for that. I am going to give you some other ideas, some techniques that you could use for this. I am going to write for you in the chat some techniques, and here I'm giving you the descriptions, and the idea is that we match the descriptions to the techniques. Okay, so they're over there. We have, unfortunately, some parents don't do any better, which is the letter of the problem. Yes, definitely. I agree with Mr. Allen. Okay, so here I have, these are the techniques, the ones that I gave you in the chat. Okay, and we have the description. These help you communicate with learners to show them it's time for them to stop what they are doing and pay attention to a new instruction or to begin a new stage in the lesson. You can use a digital stopwatch or simple actions such as clapping hands 4 times. Okay, so which of the given techniques that I wrote for you in the chat do you think would be this one? Letter E. Yes, that would be letter E. Sorry. There it is. And then I have, this is important for maintaining the classroom discipline you establish. You need to do what you say you will. Learners need to know that you mean what you say, and it is important for them to follow the rules and routines you set. We have, yes, letter A. That would be correct, being consistent, okay? This is very, very important. It's probably the most important thing, okay? That what I say is something that I do. That if I say that there is going to be a consequence, it actually happens, okay? If I undo this, if at some point they look at me and they see that I say something and that doesn't happen, I'm lost, okay? So it's very important that I'm consistent with whatever I say that I do. Then number 3, these help you and your learners to be clear about the behavior you expect in class. You can help your learners to think about and agree what is and isn't acceptable. Together, you can make a class contract. So how would you call that? Letter B, okay, yes. Those would be the classroom rules, okay? Which I was saying, it's very important that I set since the beginning. I can do it together with them, depending on their level, depending on their age. Obviously, I am going to make different kinds of rules, but so that they can agree and at least they know what they are expected to do. Then I have number 4. These are used to celebrate positive behavior and also encourage more of it. The most popular ones use cards for the whole class or points or mini certificates for individual learners. Many teachers find it effective to introduce an element of teamwork, such as putting learners in groups and giving rewards for group efforts. Okay, yes, that would be letter C, rewards system. Okay, this can be a good technique, okay, but it's very important that I don't use it like too much, okay? Because if not, they are going to be expecting that I give them something for everything that they do, okay? So at some points it can be useful, but I need to be careful to not use it too much. And finally, I have When you repeat the same activities and types of tasks, learners know what to expect and can participate more fully in activities. For example, at the beginning of every lesson, you could set the aims, and at the end of every lesson, you could ask learners to write an exit ticket. Okay, is the last one that we have, establishing routines. It's a good idea to establish a routine for some things, and it's a good idea to keep variety for other things. Okay, so it's important when I plan my lesson to get check in there which activities I am going to establish as a routine, so that they feel confident, that they know that what they can expect, but also not a lot of routine, not all my class the same routine, so that they can be expectant of what is going to happen and they can remain paying attention. Would you like to add something else on this matter before moving on to the next element? Okay. So the next element would be making appropriate decisions about which languages are used by the teacher and learners. Okay. The idea in an English class is that we actually speak in English. Okay. However, at some points, especially depending on the level of my learners and the topic that I am going to talk about, at some points I can decide that using the learner's first language is more appropriate. Okay, it's not like completely forbidden to speak in Spanish, never again in my life. Okay, I can use Spanish at some points, especially if I have low-level students or if I have small children. At some points, I can use Spanish. Okay, so when I am preparing my lesson, it is also important that I can like give space to speaking in Spanish at some point for very particular activities. Okay, the idea, of course, is to develop them to speak English. So I can help them using more English, but I can decide at some points, okay, I am going to use a little Spanish for this thing, okay, and it's not that bad. Okay, I can help them use more English by, for example, paraphrasing. They say something and I can paraphrase it for them. Help them, prompt my learners, okay, like giving them a hint to remember a word or an idea while they are speaking, reformulating what they say. If they come to me and speak in in Spanish or in Spanglish, I can reformulate what they say to help them know the correct way. Ask them for clarification. At some point, if they express something and I actually don't understand, okay, explain it a little more, and that will help them also to develop their language. Elicit learner self-correction, that would be another technique for helping them use more English. At some point, they speak too fast or they are nervous and they make mistakes. That it's not because they don't actually know how to say it, but because they are talking too fast or something like that. Okay, so, okay, you said something wrong. What would be the correct way to say it? Okay, so help with that as well. Simplify your language, as we were saying, like using academic language is not always the best choice. The more simple that I can talk to them, the easier that it's going to be for them to understand. Translate a word or an idea at some point. Yeah, you can do it. It's not like the best thing, or it's not a good thing to be doing it like all the time, but at some point I can do it, especially there are some concepts that are going to be difficult for them. And what other ideas can you give me on this matter? Okay, do you have any other ideas about what you do in your classes, or when to use or not use English? Something else you would like to add? Okay, very good. Promote synonyms, yes. Thank you, Mr. Carlos. That's a good idea. Sing, yes, that's a very nice, thank you. That's a very nice suggestion. Relate concepts with images. Yes, all of that can help, okay? The idea is for them to to be in an English environment. The more English that I use, the easier that is going to be for them to understand what I am saying. Probably the first time that I use a word, they are not going to know what I am talking about. But at some point, if they see that every time that I take, I don't know, my pencil, I say pencil, at some point they are going to know, oh, that's the pencil, because every time mime, obviously, okay, rap, make poems, posters, okay, yes, all that can help. Thank you very much for your suggestions. Okay, and we are going to move on to controlling the pace and timing of activities. Okay, to control the pace and timing of activities is very important because it helps me have my lesson controlled. Okay, I have to have clear in my head how long I'm going to be in my class. Okay, it's important that I don't give them like too much time, that I give them an activity, but that I have very clear how much time I'm going to give them. The time is not always going to be enough. Okay, at some point, some are going to finish and like faster, and some others are going to need like a lifetime to finish. But the important thing is that I have the control of how things are going to work. Okay, I can be changing the pace and the interaction adds, so I can keep them motivated. But it's very important that I have control of the time of the activities. Okay, I am going to give you some examples. We have the same teachers that we had previously, and I have this person, teacher Alan, and he says, I am really surprised how fast I get through my lessons. My colleague and I are teaching the same syllabus, and I seem to do so much more than she does in her lessons. Is this always a good thing, or should I be looking for ways to slow the lesson down? At the end of the lesson, we have a routine homework stage, and then I usually have a game for my learners. Okay, what do you think? What advice could you give this teacher Alan? Take more time to practice with the students. Yes, okay, so probably teacher Alan is going too fast, okay? Probably he's like not asking for enough feedback. He's probably not having enough communicative practice. And also what we said, okay, it's important to use at some points, we can use the reward system, okay? Like what we said at the end of the lesson, I usually have a game for my learners. Okay, if I do this, at some points, probably the students are working too fast so that they can get to the game. Okay, so I have to keep this in mind too. Now I have teacher Lina, and she says, generally, I manage my lesson pace well. I try to always give clear instructions, use simple short sentences, and have a variety of activities. However, my learners' behavior slows the pace of my lessons. For example, with too much talking, not following instructions, or disturbing their classmates. I change where learners sit from time to time, but I still find it slows the lesson down. Okay, what do you think is happening with Lina's learners? Make sure you're achieving goals, improve the classroom control. Yes, okay, probably the learners are getting bored. Okay, probably her instructions are being too long to complete a task, or they don't have clear like the aims of the activity. Some are requiring too much effort. You have to have special assignments. Okay, so it's combining the learners in groups and pairs probably is not appropriate for certain activities. So it's working with the interaction patterns as well as the kind of activities and attractive activities. Okay, and finally we have teacher Sam, and he says, my learners all seem to work at very different speeds. Some of them finish activities really quickly and are left waiting for the rest of the class to finish. Others don't ever seem to finish, and I have to stop them before they finish so we can continue the lesson. Okay, so what would you say to teacher Sam? To set a group price according the age or interested? Best way to pair up students to help the students. Okay, yes, that could be That could be a good idea, okay? Probably like breaking activities down to identify certain parts that need to be completed, or some that could be missed, they are not really necessary, and extra activities, okay? Definitely, you always need to have extra activities for the fast finishers. Okay, so these are some ideas that can help you with your pacing in case you can relate to any of these teachers. And we have over here some do's and don'ts. Have a variety of interaction patterns. Do you think that's something that you should do? Yes. Set time limits. Definitely, okay? It's important to set time limits. Then change the topic within a lesson. No, okay? Definitely, it's not a good idea to change the topic within a lesson. Make changes to the lesson plan if needed. Yes, okay? We said since the beginning, okay, that we have a lesson plan, but we at some point are going to be needing to change it. Give long instructions to activities. No, it's not a good idea. Give signals throughout the class about which stage you are at. Yes. Have an additional optional activity which can be used if there is time. Yes, okay, what we were saying. Okay, it's very important to have fast finishers activities. Have an open-ended approach to some activities. Yes, okay, at some point, like have more ideas. And stop the lesson if you finish your lesson plan. No, definitely, okay? I have to keep them engaged. If I finish my lesson plan, I have to, I don't know, invent more activities, plan my next lesson in a better way, or something that can help me have my students interested at all times. Okay, and it is very important to take into account all these 6 elements and the practice of managing my lesson, but also it is important to organize my lesson properly. Okay, not only take these elements into account, but also the structure of my lesson. What am I going to do before my class starts? What am I going to do while the class is actually happening? And what I need to do after the class ends, okay? Before the class, I need to identify my objectives, plan my activities, the way that I am going to make them flow throughout the class, the interaction patterns, the assessments that I am going to use, and all the sequence of my lesson. I have to create a realistic timeline, having this setting of times, and plan for a lesson closure. Okay, it's very important that I have a closure to my lesson. During the class, I need to share my lesson plan with the students, like do the activities to try to keep them engaged and keep focused on what are their actual needs, so I can keep doing changes if I need to. And after the class, I need to reflect on what worked well and why, and what probably I could have done differently, so I can start all over again and plan my next lesson in a better way. It's not a crime to interact with them beside the class. Oh, no, definitely it's a good thing. Okay, do you have any other comments that you would like to add? Questions? Okay, we are about to finish. Okay, very good. For a closure to this session, I would like you to go again to this link. Is the one that I gave you at the beginning as well. And I want you on that link to write words, like just one, you can write even 5 words, okay? I'm going to put it in the chat again. Okay, there it is in the chat. I put it in the chat again, the link. And please write words that describe something that you learned today. How did you feel? Anything that you would like to share. Just click in the link and write words. You write the word, you click on submit, and we can see it over here. Clear information. Thank you. No, thank you for your attention. Planning. We have strategies, information. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much to you for your attention, for your participation. And well, I hope that all of these resources and everything that we talked about was useful for you. And thank you very much for your attention and your participation. And you're going to see encuesta de satisfacción. If you can please answer it. And when you finish answering this, that would be the end of the session. Okay, remember that as a closure, I can tell you that even if something doesn't work, you have to keep calm and pretend it's on the lesson plan, okay? What we said since the beginning. The important thing that I have to have into account is that I can change things at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting session. Please, teachers, don't leave without answering the poll, please. It's really important for us to have your opinions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay,
Have a
thank
nice
you very
day.
much.
Thank you very much.
Please, as Claudia said, don't forget to answer the poll, and that would be the end of the session. Thank you very much. Anyways, you have there my email and phone number in case you need anything. I'm at your service.
Thank you. Goodbye.
It's been fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a very nice evening.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Nice afternoon.
Thank you. Same for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was sort of great.
Thank you. I can't submit the inquiry, it won't let me. Alguien por ahí de técnicos, tenemos ahí por un comentario que no pueden enviar la respuesta.
Muchas gracias. Bajamos un poquito nuestra pantalla. Tenemos tenemos 10 preguntas y al final debe de aparecer un botoncito de enviar. Solamente hay que checar que estemos conectados a internet, por favor.
I already done, teacher, and send it. Thank you.
Okay,
Have a
thank
nice
you
day.
very much. Thank you. Nice afternoon.
Hola, Ale.
Hola.
¿Cómo te sentiste?
Pues bien, estaba un poco nerviosa del tiempo porque sentía que no me iba a dar tiempo, pero creo que al final sí logré tener el tiempo indicado.